welcome to the show, All About Artists. And I'd like to introduce my guest, Jane Hudson.
Hello, great to be here.
A very talented and artist and musician from Williamstown. And Jane, what inspired you to become an artist and a musician?
Well, my parents were both artists. My mother was an actress and my father was a concert pianist, so I had the models right there. And because, they had great talents one way and another, and therefore I couldn't do exactly what they did. One wishes that one could do that, but it doesn't often work out, being the child of accomplished people. And so I went through many media, from poetry to acting to music to begin with. I started taking piano lessons when I was 3 years old. The expectation of my parents that that's what I would do, and of course, as we know, it didn't turn out that way. Although in the end, I did pick up music again in rock and roll. At a certain point, I had never had any training as a visual artist. My parents were obviously involved in other things, and when I met my husband, he encouraged me to explore painting, which is something that I had always loved, but had never dared to do. And so I started painting in the 70s, and I was totally enthralled with it. And then for various reasons, not the least of which is that we got jobs teaching video at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, I stopped and got totally caught up with teaching and everything else. And then when we came out here, we ran a business out here, an antiques business.
Oh, I remember that.
We had a shop at Mass Mocha for 8 years, actually, which was a lot of fun. Wonderful place to meet people, and that was terrific. But then I retired from that. I finally said, enough working. I had been working since I was 15 years old. I said, enough. And so I picked up painting again, and it has become my total obsession at this point. So that's the background on why I'm an artist.
Well, that is some background, I must say. How impressive.
Thanks.
You ended up painting, but you made art in many media.
I
Can you
did.
tell us about that?
Well, as I said, I tried to find my way
Yes.
to focus, and I was never able to, for reasons of circumstance and my own temperament. The truth of it never sort of made sense to me until I hit video. I mean, obviously the painting, but video really spoke to me because it combined performance, which is something I knew about because of my mother and my experience as an actor, and music, and conceptual art and visual art, and so video was a wonderful medium for me for a long time, and I taught it for 32 years.
And we'll be having a video coming up in a little while that you did.
Right, which is
Absolutely
about a whole other subject about my
Exactly.
painting and tarot, and anyway, we'll get there.
We'll get there. We got plenty of time.
We do.
Like you said, you taught for many years.
Yes.
What was your teaching philosophy?
Well, it's interesting. I never wanted to be a teacher. I thought those that taught didn't do things. They talked about things, but they didn't actually do things. Anyway, I had biases about it, which was silly, because once I got into the classroom, and my first experience was substitute teaching in a local in a local school system from kindergarten to 12th grade. And
Wow.
so for a whole semester, I experimented with all of that.
That's interesting.
I ended up teaching high school English for 7 years or something. And I think maybe because of my own artistic leanings, because my philosophy of life is generally a liberal one, I was anxious to explore alternative ways of relating to students and really to try to seek out what it was that motivated them, as opposed to necessarily imparting information that they were supposed to remember and pass back to me. So I think my philosophy really had to do with that kind of developmental thinking. And that translated from my high school experience into the 32 years of teaching at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, which was an incredible place and remains an incredible place. And the philosophy there was to do just that, to build the student from the ground up on some level, to rid the student of their prejudices or their expectations or whatever, and come at them from the root of their personhood and develop that. And that was an extraordinary experience. Wonderful colleagues, and with many of whom I am still connected. So that was my teaching philosophy, if that's clear enough.
Oh, that's pretty clear. You are a committed painter. Can you tell us about your current work?
Well, yes, I brought a few examples. Over here, these two little pieces were the beginning of a series that I call the Orb series. And one of my longtime interests and obsessions, if you will, is outer space, is the cosmos.
Oh,
And it's a place that metaphorically that I live in on some level. And it's mystical, it's spiritual, it's a metaphor for psyche. And these orbs are both remindful of actual celestial objects, stars and planets, but they are also about a kind of spiritual radiance that is a part of every human being. And so they're about beings on some level. They come from a kind of epiphany moment that I had where I could feel that radiance on some level coming from myself and connecting me to larger truths, if you will, larger energy. So it's about energies. And anyway, so these were sort of my first foray into the orb idea. I had, painted other things before that, abstractions generally. My interest in early 20th century European abstraction, and there's a woman, a painter from Sweden who has become quite popular and well known now, named Hilma af Klint, whose work was shown at the Guggenheim a couple of years ago, and everybody went, "Oh my God!" She was the beginning of abstract painting in Europe. Something that had been attributed to male painters up to that point. And so that was sort of a controversy and an exciting exception. So her background in a movement called Theosophy, which was sort of spiritualist movement, and the paintings having been inspired by her relationship with spirits. Was all, and some background anyway. It doesn't matter to go into deep detail about that, but suffice it to say, it was an inspiration to me to allow myself to be sort of public about this interest of mine.
I love abstract.
The abstraction, but also the spiritual piece.
And that, I was just going to say that.
Yes.
In that you get that spiritual feeling from your painting.
Well, yes, and you know, the interesting thing is that in the kind of contemporary art world, it had heretofore been kind of a no-no to go into that. Spiritualism was something that was pushed aside and not taken seriously until Off Clint came, and everybody went, oh, maybe we should think about that.
Exactly.
So that's kind of where my work has come from, or certainly been inspired by. These pieces are the most recent that I've done. This one called Conjunction, and you can see there's a triangle shape here, and this one called Galaxy. So these are ideas from astrology, but they're also from astronomy and I'm also treating them in terms of paint. This is a kind of a new, fresh way for me to apply paint. It's very wet, and it allows the colors to kind of blend together in interesting ways, and again gives a sense of sort of sweep of space, which is something that, you know, I've been very interested in, and a kind of a vortex of movement. So that, you know, that gives you a little thumbnail on the paintings and where they're at this point. I do paint on canvas, but lately, being an old girl, oops, sorry about the microphone, canvas is a bit of an effort for me, so I've been working on paper, which I like.
I've seen some of your work on canvas. As a matter of fact, I think I remember the time I wanted to buy a piece of yours.
Ah, yes.
Remember that day?
I do. That was the library show.
Yes.
Yes.
And what happened was, I said, oh, I love this one.
I know.
And then someone else came, and right when I was going to buy it, and said, no, I want it. And she couldn't get the money out of her purse quick enough. I was like, oh my goodness. And
well, we'll do it at some point, Susan. Don't you worry.
There are collectors of your art.
There are. She is one of them.
She's one of them.
And yes, I've been very fortunate, actually. I've sold a fair amount of work, some of it locally, but a lot of it via the internet, too. You know, I'm grateful for Facebook and Instagram for spreading my work out all over the world. I think the furthest at this point is I have a friend who in England who bought one, but certainly all over the country. Which is wonderful. So they are for sale. If anybody's interested.
Well, I almost have one.
Yeah, you almost have one.
That was quite a show. It was
really
wonderful. It was really wonderful.
So maybe we should talk about the tarot at this
yes,
point.
Yes, exactly. That's where I was going next. You've been a practitioner of the tarot for many years.
I have.
And could we have that? Jane made a short video, and I was wondering if we might be able to play that.
Hello, I'm Jane Hudson, and I'm here to introduce my new Major Arcana Tarot deck. Thanks to Rebecca Guanzon and Justin Adkins of Wild Soul River here in Williamstown, with whom I have partnered, I've been able to translate my paintings, which you see behind me. This is the Emperor and the Empress, into this accessible deck. I produced these paintings during the first onslaught of COVID in 2020 and went on a very intensive spiritual journey myself to work through all of the implications of each of those archetypal images. So here, for instance, is the Empress and the Emperor. These cards are remarkably powerful. They seem to have an incredible synchronous quality to whatever the querent is asking. I ask you to check them out if you're interested in the tarot, not so much as the divining instrument, but as a process of self-exploration. Thank you very much for considering them. Go to my website, Jane Hudson Paintings, for my interpretations of the cards, and to wildsoulriver.com to order the cards. Thank you. So, in light of the video, it gives you a little bit of a background of sort of the way I've approached this project. What is fascinating is during, or just at the very beginning of COVID, in 2020, I made a painting based on some geometry questions and other visual elements that I was interested in. And a friend of mine said, oh, why don't you, this looks like it might have something to do with the tarot. And, you know, she knew that I was involved with the tarot. And why don't you do the series?
Yes.
So the tarot, for those of you who don't know, the tarot, it consists of two sort of bodies of imagery and information. One is like a regular deck of cards where there are 4 suits and there are 10 numbers, and then there are court cards, like, you know, just like a regular deck of cards. And then the other section is called the major arcana, and arcana being sort of secret things. And it is comprised of 22 cards, each of which describes an element of human development. So the major arcana, if you took it from 0, and here is, this is the Fool, which is the first card. And the Fool is a person who is undeveloped, who has a sense that there is something out there that in themselves that needs to be discovered, but they have no idea what that is. And so they foolhardy and leap off a cliff and go into this new realm. And so the major arcana is, again, this is the next one, the Magician, who is someone who is able to make things, who can take the elements in the world, earth, fire, air, water, and mix them together and manifest things. So this is kind of something that a person may learn right away, that's an extraordinary capacity. And then the High Priestess comes next. And I won't go through the entire deck, but the High Priestess is the keeper of the great mysteries. And so the unconscious, that is to say, a person has to become aware that they're carrying secrets in their unconscious, and to begin to explore that realm. So essentially what the tarot does, and it takes you through, I mean, the Hierophant, for instance, is like a high priest. He's like the Pope. So he has to do with belief systems and what does it mean to have inherited belief systems, and how do you feel about that? Is that something that's real for you, or are you just habitually into it? These are very simple questions. The lovers, obviously, having to do with relationships, and complementarity within oneself. So it goes on, and there is a devil, and there is a hermit. There are many different characters in this journey, and we call it a spiritual journey. So I made this series of paintings, and a couple of years later, I met these folks who opened a shop in Williamstown called Wild Soul River, and I actually showed a few of the paintings there when they first opened 2 years ago. Rebecca Guanzon and Justin Atkins, who are the owners of this shop, were instrumental in supporting me, and to the extent that they and I cooperated to produce these cards. So now there is a deck. This is the little box that the deck comes in. And one can go to my website, which is janehudsonpaintings.com, and read my interpretations of the cards. They are for sale through wildsoulriver.com. And, it's an extraordinarily exciting thing. There will be a reception, actually, at Wild Soul River on the 22nd of this month, 4 to 7. They are at 248, I think, Cole Ave in Williamstown. So if you're inclined, drop by.
Jane, how does that function as a part of your own spirituality?
It functions to the extent that every day, every evening before I retire, I pull one card. I shuffle the deck and I pull one card.
Oh.
And it gives me a moment of reflection. Remarkably enough, it's often right on the money.
Right on the money, okay. Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
It is extraordinary. So the last thing I did want to mention, the fact that back in the day, my husband and I were into rock and roll.
Yes.
We got going, we were at the museum school. He and I both taught in the video area in the museum school, and there were a number of musicians there, and we said, oh, why not do it,
Yeah,
So we formed a punk band called the Rentals, and our most significant gig was to open for the Clash in 1979, and the Clash's first American tour, which was really quite extraordinary. Here are a couple of pictures. This is me.
Yes, please do show them.
This is me playing bass in the Rentals a long time ago, and this is both of us actually.
Oh.
And so that's probably in the 90s. We, needless to say, don't look like that anymore, but
I don't know about that, Jane.
Behind Susan is this album called Flesh, which is notable because it was one of the early synth-based productions in America. We were sort of pioneers in synthesizers. When we left the punk era, we moved to the synthesizer. And because I had training as a piano player, it wasn't hard for me to adapt to that. So we had a synth band, and we played with all kinds of, many of the sort of British invasion bands of that period, of the new wave period. So it's been an exciting evolution. The last significant gig we had was at Masmoka in 2012. And we had a couple of lesser things that happened in Williamstown, and you were at one of them.
That's what I was just going to bring up.
Yeah, I remember you dancing.
I danced to that music. I'll tell you, it was wonderful. I think I danced the whole night.
Yeah, you did.
I love to dance.
That's when we met, I think, was at that concert.
I bought your CD also.
You did. You did. So we've had a bit of a history ourselves.
Yes, we have.
Yeah, it's very sweet to be part of this. I do want to present you with this deck.
Oh.
And as thanks for doing this, that is for you.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Pull a card occasionally and
I certainly will.
See what it says.
And see what it says.
So here is.
You have to tell me.
There is my website and for the interpretations.
Jane Hudson.
JaneHudsonPaintings.com. Yep.
That's, well, I want to thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, it's my pleasure. I wish you the very best in your series. I know this is a new venture for you, and
yes, I do a lot of artwork myself.
Indeed.
I think I had about 400 pieces up at the last show I had in 2018. The little characters that I do. It's just from my emotions that come onto the paper. Yes,
your characters are quite wonderful. They're very evocative.
I'm making a book now of them.
Oh, great.
Yes, that's what I'm doing at this moment.
Wonderful, wonderful, terrific. So that will be, you'll self-publish that? That will be an actual physical object, right?
That's my third book.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Well, we keep on going, don't we?
That's right. I never stop. One of my things, never give up.
Never stop. No, not until
never give up. And
right.
Thank you so much again.
You're very welcome. A pleasure. And thank you, folks.
Thank you. Thank you, folks.